Hello. It is the third Sunday of Advent, the weekend of December 12th and 13th. Just a couple of bits of clarification. The marks on my forehead are the result of treatment for skin cancer. I do not have skin cancer. These are preventative treatments where they used CO2 to destroy damaged tissue. That's one thing. The other thing is that on Thanksgiving Day, the post that was placed on our website and on our Facebook page was an excerpt of a book that Pope Francis has written with an Englishman, Avery Invert. I can't remember his name. But anyway, I posted that Thanksgiving Day. And in that post, Pope Francis is talking about when he was a young man in the seminary and developed a lung condition, which ultimately led to him having a part of a lung or maybe a whole lung removed when he was in his 20s. And he tells how he was scared and he was afraid he was going to die and so on. Well, somehow that post from Thanksgiving has been misconstrued to be about me. And so my sister texted me Friday asking, when did you have a lung removed? Well, if I had a lung removed, she would have known, but her husband, my brother-in-law, heard it when he was getting his hair cut from somebody who told the woman who was cutting his hair that I had had a lung removed and I was critically ill. And then apparently some other priests had picked that up, probably wishful thinking on their part that I was dying. And so they have people praying. And so friends who heard those prayers were calling last night to make sure I was okay. So I am okay. I never had a lung removed. I'm fine. It's a mistaken identity. That being said, I want to direct your attention, if you care to the website of St. Mary's Parish in Crown Point. You can Google St. Mary's Parish in Crown Point. You go to their homepage. On their homepage, there's going to be a link to Advent. Underneath the link to Advent, there are going to be reflections by an English storyteller named David Wells that Father Kalich, the pastor of St. Mary's, has brought to St. Mary's in previous Advents from England. He couldn't this year because of the virus and so on and travel restrictions. But David Wells has prepared reflections on the Gospels for the 3 Sundays of Advent. I find them to be refreshing. They're short. They're very insightful. So I direct your attention, if you're looking for some material to feed your mind and heart and soul, St. Mary's Parish Crown Point website, click on the Advent and then go to the 3 reflections. There's 3 up now and there'll be the 4th one next Sunday, the 4th Sunday of Advent. That being said, I'm looking for somebody who has a drone with a camera and knows how to use it. Next Sunday afternoon, we're having 2 sessions of caroling in the parking lot, and the grounds have been decorated more than we ever did before by our maintenance people to try and bring some light into the darkness of this Christmas of 2020, this very strange Christmas of 2020. And so while we're following protocols approved by the Lake County Health Department, we're still going to try and have some wonderful festive experience. And so I'm looking for somebody who'd be willing to get us some footage using a drone of the caroling gatherings and the grounds so that we can integrate that. I'm not sure how that gets edited in to Christmas music and from our own music ministry, or just to brighten people's lives who can't get out and are nervous about getting out, which I certainly understand. Here's my reflection on these words for the wind. The gospel story this week is from John. It's the first chapter of John, and John introduces his version of John the Baptist. Remember, John the Baptist may or may not be a historical character, but as far as we're concerned, we meet John the Baptist in the Gospels, and that character functions. The John the Baptist of John's Gospel today in particular functions as pointing beyond himself. He doesn't call attention to himself. He creates some energy that raises people's curiosity as to what he's talking about. And they want to know who he is. Is he the Messiah? Is he the Christ? And so on. And he deflects all of that. He's not the Messiah. He's not Elijah. He's not one of the prophets. There's one among you who is greater than I, who's coming after me, and I'm not worthy to touch, to undo his sandals, but he's among you. And then we hear in John's Gospel that all this takes place at Bethany, across the Jordan. Well, a lot happens in Bethany in John's Gospel. That's where Martha, Mary, and Lazarus, whom Jesus loved, lives. That's where Lazarus is entombed after he dies. Jesus goes to Bethany, just a few miles from Jerusalem, and he weeps for Lazarus because he loved Lazarus. And then, I know people want to make this a miracle, and I can't change that, but Jesus, because of the love, says to Lazarus, "Come out." And Lazarus comes out of the tomb, but this is not a resuscitated body, because Jesus says to the bystanders, "Untie him, unbind him." He would have been bound with burial cloths, just like in Luke's Gospel, baby Jesus is bound in swaddling clothes. Jesus comes to liberate us from what binds us, what brings death to us. And we're not talking physical as much as we're talking spiritual. So here's my take on this. I've had some wonderful conversations with young people over the years, and continue to be blessed to have young people who find it worth some of their time to talk with me. And in talking, and then I talked to a lot of wedding couples. Yesterday I had a couple in their mid-20s. They've gone together for a long time, and they just want to be married. They don't care about the not having bridesmaids and not having a reception. They just want to be married. That's been the case in almost all of our weddings since we resumed doing weddings. The couples just want to be married. They love each other, they want to be married, and it has nothing to do as it would have in the old days so they can live together. I mean, most couples live together today. It has to do with somehow they want to discover in their midst that which gives them life. That's what John the Baptist is pointing to. Among you is one greater than I. I baptize with water. He'll baptize with the Spirit. And I think those young people simply have that hunger to have this love that they have for one another consecrated, if you will, celebrated in the church, which links it to time and eternity. It's the same thing with the people who bring their babies for baptism. They just want those babies linked to something bigger than themselves, and they turn to the church because in their experience, however it may have been, the church is what performs that function for them, not so much the building, although the building is representative of what goes on in the building. And then with funerals, I mean, funerals are extremely difficult. They're pared down to absolute bare necessity, and yet we celebrate the love of people for someone who has died and is linked forever, I believe, and they believe, I assume, to time and eternity. That's what we're about, because in our midst, among you, is someone you do not recognize. Who facilitates that, I think, is movable, is portable. You know, we're all, Father Leo had a great homily today, and in that he reminded us that, you know, at baptism, the Spirit is poured out on us. That's the Spirit of life and love. It's the Holy Spirit. We invoke that Spirit often. Much of the time we don't take note of it, but every once in a while we're touched by it. And I think that sustains us. In my conversation with my young friend once recently, we talked about how easy it is to try and turn our lives into square pegs into which we're trying to pound a round, or a square peg we're trying to pound into a round hole, because we don't let the truth of our lives emerge. And the truth of our lives emerged when we're touched by that one among us whom we do not recognize, that comes to baptize with the Spirit. And that baptism is not a ceremony that takes place once. It's a reality that's an ongoing part, I believe, of what it is to be a beloved child of God. Sometimes people in my profession make the mechanics of the church seem as an end in themselves. The destination is the mechanics. If you do it, then somehow it makes it real. I think that the institution of the church functions very much like John the Baptist. It points beyond. You know, I can raise curiosity in you, but I can point you beyond to the truth of the life that is yours, if you are able to note and watch and take note of the Spirit, the one among you, the one among us, that we do not recognize. I think that's what's important. You know, in this day of suffering, alienation, legions of people are hungry, terrified, without income. It's got to be awful. I mean, the lines for food all over the world, but all over our country, you know, speak to us, I think, of some serious corrections we need to make in what we think is important. The legions of healthcare people at all levels, from the janitors and the maintenance people and the housekeeping people to the food service people, to the neurosurgeons, the anesthesiologists, all those people have got to be exhausted. We need to pray for them, that the Spirit of life, and I'm sure they're finding among them one they do not recognize that touches them deeply with life. Just the same thing with teachers. You know, I suspect most of our kids are functioning fairly well, but all over this country and all over this world, little ones are suffering because of the absence of community that's part of education. Many of those kids are, because they're not at school, are not eating properly. Many kids and many people are exposed to abuse because so many people are at home at the same time for long periods of time. Those are serious issues that we should not make light of. You know, it's complicated. The people that are grieving, the people that have lost, 300,000 people have lost somebody just in our country alone, and that doesn't even begin to touch the people who are scared to death because they still have loved ones who are sick. You know, I think we need to be conscious of that as we move through Christmas. You know, some of us are going to be deprived of things that we take for granted, but what we're deprived of is going to be small in stature in comparison to what many people will be deprived of. So on this third Sunday of Advent, as we go into the third week of Advent, take some time to be thankful. Take some time to look around and see whom you might suspect is the one among us who baptizes with the Spirit. And remember, baptism is not just some kind of ceremony. Baptism is the mystery of linking us forever to time and eternity and love. Peace be with you.